Bodega, Part 22-Eenio. ETA 3 minutes! The hollered words of Sergeant Hoffel made Ensign Krunket wince. Their dropship was screaming towards the surface of Baboosh 3, packed with soldiers, guns, ammo, missiles, AFVs, and fear. If the Federal Assault Team's special order had been deployed, the target was going to be a total flaving nightmare. Krunket's chance of death on this job alone was probably around 25%, but that was their job. To be the people willing to risk their lives to protect the innocent. That's what they'd signed up for. That's why they had the health plan and the funeral coverage and the bonuses. That's why the welcome pack for new recruits to the division included a Last Will and Testament starter kit and a brochure to give to your kids titled, "Why is Daddy in So Many Pieces?" It was the Fatso life. Danger, money, glory. That was their motto. And it had been convincing enough for Krunket and the other poor slobs he'd signed up with. He'd grown sick and tired of serving under Tortola and manning that boring old comms console, so he'd filed the transfer forms, and here he was, still an ensign, still getting shouted at, but now for marginally more money and vastly more chance of death or injury. Now, quick note here, this is Ensign Krunket, who was the guy on board that ship that caught Bodega the first time around back in episode 5. So this is a callback to a long time back in the story, just in case. Why am I so stupid, he thought. Why are other people much smarter than me? Why do I make a decision and then realize afterwards that it wasn't just the wrong one, it was the wrongest one? Consistently the worstest, wrongest, dumbest, most objectively idiotic decision is the one I arrive at. How could I do this to my daughter just because I got bored? Hoffel was checking the men, adjusting straps on their equipment, repositioning their rifles so they weren't pointed at other men, straightening out helmets, and occasionally lightly pounding someone on the shoulder to give them a bit of reassurance. It wasn't working. Everybody under his command looked utterly terrified, except Krunket. He just looked angry. "That's the spirit, soldier," said Hoffel, noting Krunket's furious expression and mistaking it for some kind of battle-ready war face. Something occurred to Krunket. All the troops in this dropship were transfers. They'd all been through the same 2-week intensive training program, and at night in their barracks they'd all lain awake talking about how they'd grown bored of their old jobs, pushing pixels around in the endless bureaucracy of the Federation. None of them were soldiers, yet here they were, being flung towards a combat zone by the powers that be. What in the flav were they going to do if they got into a fight? Krunket had never fired a weapon in anger before, except that time he shot a Dildonian who he suspected of cheating with his wife. "ETA 1 minute, screamed Hoffel. "Everybody take your combat supplement now!" All 15 men necked the large combat lozenge they'd been issued with. It was about the size of an eyeball, extremely hard to swallow, but they washed it down with water from their canteens, choking and retching all the while. Combat supplements. This wasn't in the field manual. Was it going to give them super strength? Immunity from pain? Send them into some kind of war trance? Damn feds. Always finding new ways to flarb over the working man, thought Krunket. It felt like he'd been cheated out of at least 50 seconds of that 1 minute warning, because before he could gird his loins and maybe panic a bit, the ship hit the ground hard and they were piling out the back. Smoke was being pumped out of nozzles on the rear of the ship to screen their deployment, but he could hear klaxons sounding all over the small town they'd landed in, and people were scattering and slamming doors and windows as the citizens took cover. Krunket drove his legs as fast as possible and slammed into the wall of a convenience store. The ground beneath him was earthy, and he contemplated whipping out his entrenching tool and digging a small hole to hide in. He scanned the area. It was a small town. Dirt roads, a few stores, wide streets. The hills and forests outside town looked beautiful against the pale blue sky, streaked with pink clouds. The 5 moons of Baboosh 3 loomed overhead in tight formation, watching. The dropship powered up its engines and zoomed away, leaving the 15 members of his squad cowering on the ground, behind the most pitiful cover imaginable. 3 troopers squeezed in behind a single plastic water barrel, another 4 fighting to hide behind a dumpster. Hoffel was behind a traffic cone in the middle of town, his command pistol drawn. He turned towards Krunket, his grizzled veteran's face sneering at the danger they were surely in. "All right, you miserable bastards, let's move out!" And with that proclamation, he stood up and turned face first into a lasgun beam. His head popped like a water balloon, and a heavy red mist quickly settled on the dirt as his body slumped over with a crunch. A voice called out from some hidden vantage point. "Federal varmints, this is Bodega. If y'all got a way to call your dropship back, I recommend it. You got 2 minutes to get the flarv out of town. After that, the only way you're leaving is when you get washed away by the next heavy rain." 4 of the troopers threw their weapons aside and began undressing, right down to their birthday suits, screaming the whole time. They ran out of town in a cloud of dust. The remaining 10 men spread out as best they could, uncertain of the direction any attack would come from. 1 minute left, called Bodega, still hidden. This is it, squealed one of the troopers, Cadet Brunks. They sent one squad for Bodega? There were meant to be a dozen dropships, screamed Cadet Jellyface. Flav this, said Krunket, standing. He threw down his rifle. The Federation had sent just one ship, one lousy ship of total rookies to face one of the most dangerous men in the galaxy. This wasn't a combat mission, it was a charnel house. We surrender, called Krunket. The other troops looked at him. Their leader dead, they were ready to turn to whomever was willing to make a command decision, and right now, surrendering seemed like the most incredible command decision ever made. They were immensely proud of their new leader, Enseign Krunket, who nobly sacrificed their dignity and honor so that they might live another day. All the men threw down their weapons and stood, hands on their heads. They moved into the center of town, next to a small and quite attractive water feature. Bodega emerged from a nearby building, lasgun set against his hip, confident and ready. All right, boys, sit yourselves down right there in the middle, circle style, said Bodega. Krunket looked up at him. Bodega. The Bodega. He'd been there before, aboard the SS Expectation, when they'd captured Bodega the first time. He never thought to actually come this close, face to face with the most wanted man in the Federation. Bodega strode towards the group, scanning them for signs of trouble, looking into their eyes for any glimmer of fight left in the shattered squad. Alrighty then, said Bodega, relaxing slightly before spitting on the ground. Damn feds. I'm sorry they sent you poor sons of morks to take me down. It ain't your fault you're ill-equipped, and there ain't no hard feelings. Now don't go worrying. I ain't gonna slaughter you boys, but I can't have you following me neither. Gonna have to send you off to Sleepy Land. Bodega reached inside the folds of his long, dusty, grey-brown coat and pulled out a small purple sphere that Krunket recognized from the field manual as Happy Thoughts Brain Musher, TM. As Bodega was fiddling with it, one of the cadets began to shake, slightly at first, then increasingly violently. Don't freak out on me, son, said Bodega, looking mildly concerned. It was Cadet Brunks. He wasn't just shaking, he was convulsing. He collapsed to one side, foaming red at the mouth. Bodega backed away. He called out to someone Krunket couldn't see. Krunket turned back to look at Brunks just as the young cadet's body seemed to shear in two. The other members of the squad screamed and stood to flee. A silver-skinned animal emerged from the ruins of Brunks' body, just less than human-sized. It was crouched like a dog, but its face was longer like a horse's, and at the tip was a wide nozzle-like protuberance that was oozing something viscous. It turned its head to look at Bodega and spat a stream of the ooze, striking him in the legs. Bodega went down hard, looking like his knees had been glued together. "Tamira, run!" shouted Bodega as he raised his lasgun and blasted the creature in the maw, felling it. Several of the other cadets fell to the dirt, vibrating and shuddering, wailing. Krunket felt something stirring in his guts, in his limbs, in his head. He felt a terrible pushing sensation against the inside of his skull. That combat supplement. It wasn't a pill. It was some kind of damn egg. And they were the hosts. Bodega was dragging himself away from the group of writhing troopers. Krunket saw him reach down and try to pull off the gooey substance on his legs, only to find his hand now stuck fast too. Only one hand remained, and that was firmly gripping his famous lasgun. As more of the creatures emerged from his comrades, Krunket slumped forward. He thought about his family, his desk job. He thought about his funeral coverage and his childhood. He thought about a lot of things in a very short space of time. He looked at Bodega once more and saw the growing pack of silvery creatures descending on the cowboy, spitting on him and entangling him amidst a volley of desperate lasgun fire. Then he thought of nothing at all as his body exploded and a new life was violently created as another was snuffed out. The end.
Oh!
Very good, P-Flex.
Flex, you legit are good at writing, man. It's fucking crazy. That was a good one.
Oh, the Bodega book is...
It's coming. It's coming, boys.
It's coming, boys.